We thought we knew this family. The smiles, the arguments, the tears broadcast for the world to see. A story of forbidden love, cultural clashes, and a mother who would not yield. But what if there's a missing face in this portrait? A face they have spent a lifetime and a fortune erasing. What if the entire saga of Sumit and Jenny, every fight, every ultimatum, every desperate plea, was never about what we were shown? We have been contacted by sources deep within the Indian social services system, a social worker who has risked everything to reveal the truth about a secret daughter whose existence is the key that unlocks the entire Sumit and Jenny saga. This isn't just a family dispute, it's a conspiracy of silence, a story of a child hidden from the world, a child whose very existence has been used as a weapon, a child whose name is Amisha Singh. This is a story that will change everything you think you know about 90 Day Fiancé. The information we are about to present is based on explosive insider reports and exclusive theories that paint a picture so dark, it makes the on-screen drama look like child's play. If what you're about to hear shocks you, if it makes you question everything, then please support this investigation by hitting that like button. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because you are not going to want to miss a single update on this developing story. This goes deeper than you could ever imagine. Let's rewind. For years, we have watched the agonizing push and pull between Sumit Singh and Jenny Slatin. We saw a man seemingly paralyzed by indecision, caught between the American woman he loved and the traditional Indian family he could not bear to disappoint. We were fed a narrative, a simple, digestible story of culture and tradition. His parents, Anil and Sadhna, were presented as the ultimate antagonists, their objections rooted in a deep-seated belief that Jenny, a woman 30 years his senior, was an unsuitable and shameful match for their son. We watched Sadhna's theatrical displays of sorrow, her dramatic threats, her claims of being socially ostracized. We saw Anil's quiet, simmering disapproval, a wall of patriarchal authority that Sumit seemed powerless to breach. We were led to believe their motivations were tradition, honor, and what they called love for their son. We were told the conflict was about age, about nationality, about the expectations of society, but it was always a lie, a carefully constructed, expertly performed lie, broadcast to millions, while the real story, the truly shameful secret, was locked away, miles from the cameras, in a quiet room in a remote facility. The truth is not about tradition. It has nothing to do with Jenny's age or the neighbor's gossip. The Singh family's iron-fisted control over Sumit, their desperation, their cruelty, is rooted in their darkest secret, a secret they have guarded for over 2 decades. They have a third child, a daughter. Sumit has a sister. Her name is Amisha, and for the entirety of her life, she has been a ghost, a non-entity, a financial burden, and a source of leverage so powerful it has dictated every major decision in Sumit's adult life. Our sources have pieced together a timeline, a tragic history that begins not with Jenny, but with a birth that was meant to be a celebration, but instead became the foundation of a family's ruin. Over 20 years ago, Sadhna and Anil welcomed their second child, a daughter they named Amisha. But the joy was short-lived. It was soon discovered that Amisha was born with a severe and profound disability. The specific nature of her condition is protected by privacy, but we understand it required constant, lifelong care. Care that Anil and Sadhna were unwilling to provide. In their world, a world obsessed with perception, with status, with presenting an image of perfection and prosperity, a disabled child was not a challenge to be met with love, but a stain to be hidden, a source of deep, unbearable cultural shame. They saw her not as their daughter, but as a curse, a blemish on their family name that would impact their social standing, their business dealings, and even the marriage prospects of their other children, Sumit and his brother Amit. So they made a choice, a monstrous, calculated choice. Instead of raising their daughter, instead of integrating her into their family, they decided to erase her. When she was just a small child, a toddler barely old enough to form memories, they had her quietly admitted to a private, long-term care facility, a place far from their home, far from anyone who knew them, a place where their secret could be kept for the right price. Out of sight, out of mind. They went back to their lives, to their community, and pretended she never existed. They adjusted the family portrait, both literally and figuratively, to show only 2 sons. The lie became their reality. They told themselves it was for the best, for her own good, for the good of the family, but it was an act of profound abandonment, a denial of her very humanity. And Sumit knew. He wasn't a baby when she was sent away. He was a young boy, old enough to remember his little sister. He remembers playing with her. He remembers her presence in the house, and he vividly remembers the day she was gone. The silence that followed, the chilling finality of an empty room. He was a child forced to become an accomplice in his own family's greatest crime. He was told never to speak her name, never to ask about her. He was taught that her existence was a source of shame. This knowledge, this complicity, became the defining trauma of his life. It explains the sadness in his eyes, the deep-seated guilt that seems to radiate from him. It explains his desperate need for love and acceptance, and his paralyzing fear of confrontation with his parents. Because they didn't just hide their daughter from the world, they used her as a chain around their son's neck. This brings us to the television show, to 90 Day Fiancé. We all wondered, why would this intensely private, traditional family agree to air their dirty laundry on international television? The answer is as cynical as it is simple. Money. The kind of specialized, discreet care Amisha required was not cheap. Our investigation has revealed that the annual cost for her confinement at the facility is approximately $40,000. $40,000 every single year for over 20 years. It's a staggering sum, a constant financial drain that became the family's primary motivation. The money they received from the show, season after season, was not for a new car or a bigger house. It was the price of silence. It was the money that kept Amisha hidden, the money that paid the facility to keep their secret buried. The show was never about Sumit's love life. It was a business transaction to fund the lie. Every scene we watched was tainted by this hidden context. Every argument over Jenny was, in reality, an argument about the stability of their funding. When Sadhna lamented that Sumit was throwing his life away, she wasn't talking about his happiness. She was talking about the potential loss of the television income that kept their secret safe. Their control over him was absolute, not because of tradition, but because they held the ultimate bargaining chip, his sister's well-being. Their threats were never empty. They were terrifyingly specific. You want to defy us? You want to marry this woman and end the show? Fine. But where will the money for Amisha come from? We will have no choice but to move her to a state-run institution, a place with no privacy, with minimal care. Is that what you want for your sister, Sumit? Do you want her to suffer because of your selfishness? This was the unspoken threat that hung over every conversation, the emotional blackmail that kept Sumit in a state of suspended animation for a decade. He wasn't just choosing between Jenny and his parents. He was being forced to choose between his own happiness and his sister's survival. It was an impossible choice, a moral dilemma that would break even the strongest man. And for years, the system worked for them. The facility was discreet, the staff were paid to be silent, and the world remained ignorant. But they didn't count on one person. They didn't count on a woman whose compassion was not for sale. Her name is Layla Nair. She is not a television personality or a family member. She is a nurse, a caregiver at the facility where Amisha has lived for the last 15 years. And to Amisha, Layla Nair is more of a mother than Sadhna has ever been. Leela is our primary source, the whistleblower who could no longer stand by and watch this injustice unfold. She has seen firsthand the devastating loneliness of Amisha's existence. She has seen the cold indifference of Anil and Sadhna. She has seen the truth that shatters the entire 90 Day Fiancé narrative. Nurse Leela's testimony, shared with our contacts, paints a horrifying picture of neglect. She has kept meticulous records, not just of Amisha's medical needs, but of the family's involvement, or rather the lack thereof. The official visitor logs for the facility, which she has courageously preserved, are the first piece of damning evidence. In the 15 years Leela has worked there, and in the more than 20 years Amisha has been institutionalized, her parents, Anil and Sadhna, have visited her a total of 2 times. Twice. Once when she was first admitted, and once more about a decade ago, a brief, sterile visit that lasted less than an hour. They have sent no birthday cards, no holiday gifts. They call the facility once a month, not to inquire about their daughter's health or happiness, but to confirm the billing details and ensure the automatic payment has gone through. To them, she is not a person. She is an expense, a line item on a budget sheet. But someone else cared. Someone was tormented by her absence. Sumit. And this is where the story turns, where we find the core smoking gun evidence that proves his lifelong anguish. Nurse Leela, seeing the profound sadness in the young girl who never had a visitor, became a protector of the few connections Amisha had to the outside world. And that connection was Sumit. For years throughout his childhood and teenage years, Sumit sent letters and drawings to his sister at the facility. He didn't know if she could read them or understand them, but he sent them anyway. It was his only way of keeping her memory alive, his only way to fight back against the erasure his parents had enforced. And Leela, recognizing the significance of these messages, kept every single one. She has preserved a box of these heartbreaking communications, a collection of papers that documents a brother's love and a family's crime. We have been told of their contents, drawings made in crayon by a 7-year-old Sumit, showing a stick figure family of 5. A mother, a father, 2 boys, and a girl, all holding hands under a smiling sun. Letters written in a child's clumsy script. Dear Amisha, I miss you. Mama says we can't talk about you, but I will not forget. I love you. As he got older, the letters became more desperate, more filled with promises he was powerless to keep. Amisha, I am saving my money. One day I will be a man and I will have my own house and I will come and rescue you. I promise. We will be a real family again. Another letter reads, they are fighting again about the money for your school. They think I don't hear. They think I don't know they are lying. But I know you are not at a school. You are my sister and they are keeping you from me. Don't worry, I will fix this. These letters are the key. They prove that Sumit's indecisiveness was not weakness. It was the manifestation of a deep internal war. He was a boy who made a promise to rescue his sister, and a man who was systematically prevented from keeping it by the very people who created the situation. His parents used his love for Amisha as the ultimate tool of manipulation. Every step he took toward independence, toward Jenny, was met with a threat against his sister. The weight of that promise and the guilt of his failure to keep it is what we have been seeing on our screens for years. We have been watching a man being psychologically tortured, and we, the audience, were completely oblivious to the real stakes. Think about the timeline of the show. Sumit's initial catfishing of Jenny. It seems so bizarre, so cowardly. But what if it wasn't just a simple deception? What if it was the desperate act of a man suffocating under his family's control, trying to find a connection, a lifeline to a world outside his gilded cage, a world where he wasn't constantly being reminded of his secret and his powerlessness? He reached out, found a genuine connection with Jenny, and then the reality of his situation came crashing down. He couldn't tell her the truth. How could he? How do you tell the woman you love that your entire family is built on a foundation of lies and human cruelty? How do you explain that your parents are not just traditional, but monstrous? So he lied. He hid his first marriage, a marriage his parents undoubtedly arranged to further control him and secure a family alliance that would benefit them. The entire drama surrounding that first divorce takes on a new, sinister meaning. We were told his parents paid a significant sum, around $20,000, to facilitate the divorce. We assumed it was to settle a dispute, to appease the other family, but our sources suggest it was much more than that. It was hush money. It's likely that the first wife's family, through their connection to the Singhs, had become aware of rumors, of whispers about the other child. The $20,000 wasn't just for a divorce settlement. It was a payment to ensure their silence, to buy their complicity in the grand conspiracy. It was another expense in the high cost of maintaining the lie. Sumit was trapped in the middle, a pawn in a game where every move was dictated by his parents' fear of exposure. This context reframes every single interaction we've seen. Remember the explosive scenes when Sadhna and Anil moved in with Sumit and Jenny? Sadhna's relentless criticism, her attempts to mold Jenny into a traditional Indian daughter-in-law, her emotional breakdowns over household chores. We saw it as a mother-in-law's disapproval, but it was an act of desperation. They were on the ground, inside the relationship, trying to sabotage it from within. They needed to break Sumit's bond with Jenny because that bond represented the single greatest threat to their control, to the flow of money, and to the stability of their secret. Sadhna wasn't weeping because Jenny couldn't cook. She was weeping with the terror of a woman whose entire world was on the verge of collapsing. She was fighting for the survival of her lie, not for the sanctity of her family's tradition. Anil's role is equally culpable. His stoic, silent disapproval was not a sign of quiet dignity. It was the cold, hard stance of a businessman protecting his most crucial asset, the secret. He was the enforcer, the one who would have the quiet, menacing conversations with Sumit off camera, reminding him of his duty, not to his parents, but to the lie. He would be the one to lay out the financial consequences, to detail exactly what would happen to Amisha if Sumit stepped out of line. While Sadhna provided the emotional drama for the cameras, Anil was the puppet master, pulling the strings of financial and emotional blackmail. This web of deceit continued for years, with Sumit growing more and more weary, more and more trapped. He loved Jenny, but every time he moved closer to marrying her, the threats from his parents would escalate. They would call him, their voices cold and precise, and talk about the rising costs at the facility. They would mention a review of Amisha's case, hinting that a lack of funds could lead to her being transferred to a far less comfortable state-run home for the destitute. They preyed on the guilt they themselves had instilled in him since childhood. They had created the wound, and for 2 decades, they salted it every single day to keep him under their thumb. He was living in a constant state of low-grade terror, trying to appease his parents to protect his sister, while also trying to hold on to the one person who offered him a chance at real happiness. He wasn't weak, he was being systematically broken. The breaking point, according to our sources, came recently, after the cameras had stopped rolling on their latest season. The pressure was mounting. Sumit and Jenny were married, and his parents' leverage seemed to be weakening. They had lost the battle to prevent the marriage, but they had not lost the war. They still controlled Amisha's fate. In a final, desperate act of cruelty, Sadhna delivered an ultimatum that would finally shatter Sumit's years of silence. We are told the conversation was brutal. She accused him of abandoning his family, of choosing a stranger over his own blood. And then she delivered the final, unforgivable blow. She allegedly told him, "You have made your choice. You have your wife. Now you can live with the consequences. We are done paying. Your sister's fate is now your problem. Let's see how your new wife feels when she learns that your love for her has condemned your disabled sister to a life of squalor." It was a declaration of war, a threat so vile, so heartless, it severed the last remaining thread of loyalty Sumit had for his mother. In that moment, he realized that his parents felt nothing for Amisha. She was not a daughter to them. She was a tool. And now that the tool was no longer effective, they were willing to discard it, and her, without a second thought. He finally understood that his compliance would not protect his sister. His silence would only guarantee her continued misery and isolation. The promise he made as a little boy, the promise to rescue her, came flooding back no longer as a source of guilt, but as a call to action. He saw with blinding clarity that the only way to save his sister was to destroy the people who had imprisoned her, his own parents. This is where the story takes its most dramatic and unexpected turn. The internal betrayal twist, the one no one saw coming, came from Sumit himself. The quiet, gentle, indecisive Sumit finally broke. But he didn't break down. He broke free. The years of pent-up rage, grief, and love for his sister crystallized into a single, decisive purpose. He knew he couldn't go to the police in his hometown, where his family had influence and connections. He needed to find someone impartial, someone powerful, someone who specialized in the kind of injustice his sister had endured her entire life. After a night of torment, he made a decision that would incinerate his entire world. He used a burner phone and an anonymous email address to contact a prominent human rights law firm in Delhi known for taking on powerful families and government corruption. He arranged a clandestine meeting. The image is something out of a spy thriller. Sumit, disguised in a hat and sunglasses, meeting a lawyer in a crowded, noisy cafe far from his neighborhood. He was trembling, not with fear, but with the terrifying resolve of a man who had nothing left to lose. And there, in that anonymous meeting, he confessed everything. He told the lawyer the entire story, from the day his sister disappeared to his mother's final cruel threat. He laid bare the family's 20-year conspiracy of shame, abandonment, and blackmail. He provided the 2 most critical pieces of information: the name of his sister, Amisha Singh, and the exact name and location of the private care facility where she was being held. He became the whistleblower. He handed his own family over to the justice system, knowing full well that this act would lead to their ruin, their imprisonment, and his own public branding as a traitor to his family. But at that moment, he wasn't thinking of himself or even of Jenny. He was thinking of the little girl in the crayon drawing, the sister he had promised to rescue. He was finally keeping his promise. Sumit's confession was the spark that lit the fuse. The human rights lawyer, a seasoned professional named Adira Sharma, knew immediately that this was not just a family dispute, but a case of gross human rights violations. Armed with Sumit's sworn, detailed testimony, she moved with lightning speed. She didn't want to risk the Singhs finding out and trying to move Amisha or destroy records. She immediately petitioned the High Court, presenting Sumit's confession under seal as a whistleblower's report. She argued that a young woman was being held in a state of unlawful imprisonment, deprived of her liberty and familial rights, and that there was an immediate and credible threat to her well-being. The judge, stunned by the allegations against a family known from television, granted an emergency order. A multi-agency task force was formed, composed of officials from Health and Human Services, Child Protective Services, and federal investigators. The raid was planned in secret, a coordinated effort to secure the facility, protect Amisha, and seize all records before the Singh family could be alerted. The house of cards, so carefully constructed over 2 decades, was about to be blown away in a single decisive gust of wind. The storm was coming for Anil and Sadhna Singh, and their own son was the one who had unleashed it. What happens next is a legal and media firestorm that will make the drama on the show look like a pleasant memory. The raid, the discovery of Amisha, the courtroom battle, and the final devastating judgment. In the next part of this report, we will uncover the fallout of Sumit's courageous betrayal and the final reckoning for the Singh family. The truth, in all its ugly and tragic detail, is about to be exposed to the world. The raid on the Serene Meadows Care residence did not happen with sirens blaring. It was a quiet, deliberate operation, executed in the cold gray light of dawn. A convoy of unmarked government vehicles rolled down the long private lane, the crunch of tires on gravel the only sound breaking the morning stillness. The facility from the outside looked like a luxury retreat, manicured lawns, tasteful architecture, a facade of compassionate care bought and paid for. But the officials who stepped out of those cars were not there to admire the landscaping. They were there to liberate a ghost. The facility director, a man accustomed to dealing with wealthy, discreet clients, was flustered, his composure cracking as he was presented with a high court warrant. He tried to delay making phone calls, but the investigators were firm. They were not there to negotiate. They swept through the building, a team of social workers and medical examiners moving with quiet efficiency. They found Amisha Singh in a room at the end of a secluded corridor. The room was clean, sterile, and anonymous. It had a bed, a chair, and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. There were no family photographs on the nightstand, no childish drawings taped to the wall, no stuffed animals worn with love. It was not a bedroom. It was a holding cell with comfortable furniture. Amisha herself was sitting in the chair, looking out the window at the bricks. When the officials entered, she didn't seem surprised or scared, but rather with a kind of resigned curiosity. She had spent 2 decades in this place, a life defined by the same routine, the same faces, the same silence. This was the most unusual thing that had ever happened to her. The social workers, trained for tense situations, approached her with gentle words. And then from behind them came Nurse Leela Nair. The moment Amisha saw Leela, her expression changed. A small, hesitant smile touched her lips. Leela knelt beside her, speaking in a low, soothing voice, explaining that they were going somewhere new, somewhere better. As Amisha was gently escorted out, she left behind an empty room that was a testament to 20 years of nothing. The investigators, meanwhile, seized everything: visitor logs, financial records, billing statements addressed to Anil Singh, and in the director's office, a confidential client file that legally declared Amisha Singh a permanent resident with no designated next of kin for visitation, only for payment. The foundational lie was now a matter of public record. The arrest of Anil and Sadhna Singh was a public spectacle. The raid was not. It happened in the middle of the day, at their pristine home in their upscale neighborhood, the very home they had so fiercely protected from the shame of Jenny. As news cameras, tipped off by the court filing, scrambled to the scene, federal police led Anil and Sadhna out in handcuffs. The images were breathtakingly scandalous. Sadhna, the woman who had wept on international television over her son's choice of wife, was stone-faced, her eyes wide with a mixture of fury and terror. Anil, the stoic patriarch, looked diminished, a man whose carefully constructed world had been reduced to a perp walk for the evening news. The story exploded. It was a global sensation, a bizarre and horrific collision of reality television and true crime. Headlines around the world screamed the news. 90-Day Fiancé stars arrested for hiding, imprisoning disabled daughter for 20 years. The narrative they had sold to the world, of a traditional family struggling with a modern romance, was incinerated, replaced by a story of unimaginable cruelty. The trial was a national tragedy played out under the full glare of the international media. The courtroom was packed every day with reporters, curious onlookers, and horrified fans of the show who felt a strange sense of complicity. The prosecution, led by the formidable Adira Sharma, laid out its case with chilling precision. They charged Anil and Sadhna with a host of crimes: unlawful imprisonment, a charge usually reserved for kidnappers, felony child abandonment, and multiple counts of fraud for systematically lying on legal and financial documents, effectively declaring their living daughter non-existent to avoid taxes and social responsibilities. The prosecutor argued that the television money was not just income. It was proceeds of a crime, money earned to perpetuate a fraudulent family image and fund their daughter's confinement. Their motive, she argued, was not love, not protection, but the cold calculus of social and financial convenience. They had, in essence, traded their daughter's life for their own comfort and status. The defense team tried to spin a narrative of misguided protection. They argued that Anil and Sadhna, faced with a world that would be cruel to their daughter, had made the difficult choice to place her in the best possible care. They claimed the secrecy was to protect Amisha from the stigma of her disability. They painted Sumit as an ungrateful son, easily manipulated by his older American wife, who had concocted this story to destroy his parents and seize the family's assets. Sadhna took the stand and gave the performance of her life, weeping as she described her unbearable pain and her mother's love, a love so profound she had to send her child away. But the performance that had once captivated a television audience now fell flat under the cold, fluorescent lights of the courtroom. Her tears seemed manufactured, her grief self-serving. The case, however, did not hinge on Sadhna's theatrics. It hinged on the devastating testimony of two key witnesses. The first was nurse Leela Nair. When she took the stand, a hush fell over the courtroom. She spoke not with anger, but with a deep, profound sorrow that was more damning than any accusation. She described Amisha's life in minute, heartbreaking detail. She told the court about Amisha's birthdays, celebrated with a small cake shared only with the nursing staff. She described Amisha's silence, a girl who rarely spoke because she had so few people to speak to. She described how Amisha would sit by the window for hours, not waiting for anyone in particular, but just waiting. She recounted the two fleeting visits from Anil and Sadhna over 20 years, describing them as being as brief and sterile as a business meeting. Then the prosecutor presented a simple cardboard box. "Miss Nair," she asked, "can you tell the court what is in this box?" Leela's voice broke as she answered. "They are letters," she said. "Letters and drawings. From her brother Sumit. He sent them for years. I kept them for her. They were the only proof she had that someone in the world remembered she was alive." The prosecutor, with Leela's permission, began to read from the letters. She read the childish scrawl of a 7-year-old boy, promising his sister he hadn't forgotten her. She read the angry, adolescent words of a teenager raging against his parents' lies. And she read the final, desperate letter from a young man on the verge of adulthood. "Dear Amisha, every day is harder. They want me to get married soon, to a girl I don't know. They say it is for the family, but I know it is to control me, to keep me quiet. I feel like I am in a prison too, but I will not forget my promise. I will find a way. Don't give up on me, your brother, Sumit." The courtroom was a sea of stunned silence and muffled sobs. The letters were not just evidence. They were a cry for help that had gone unanswered for decades. Then it was Sumit's turn. When he was called to the stand to testify against his own parents, it was the moment the entire trial had been building towards. He looked thin, exhausted, a man hollowed out by grief and guilt. He avoided looking at his parents. He stared directly at the prosecutor as she began her questions. He recounted his childhood, the vague but warm memories of a little sister, and the chilling, inexplicable day she was gone. He described the suffocating silence in his home, the unspoken rule that Amisha's name was never to be mentioned. He then detailed, with painful clarity, the years of emotional blackmail. He explained how every life decision, his education, his career, his relationships, was controlled by the ever-present, unspoken threat to his sister's care. The defense attorney, on cross-examination, was brutal. He accused Sumit of betraying his family, of being a weak man controlled by a foreign woman. "Did you not lie for a decade?" the lawyer sneered. "Did you not catfish this woman, Jenny? Are you not a proven liar?" Sumit looked up, and for the first time he made eye contact with his parents. His voice when he spoke was steady and clear. "Yes," he said. "I lied. I lied to everyone. I lied to Jenny. I lied to the world. I lived a life of lies because I was born into a lie. My parents built our family on the most unforgivable lie of all, that their daughter did not exist. Every lie I told was a desperate attempt to survive inside the prison they built for me." The prosecutor then asked him the final question. "Mr. Singh, why did you come forward now?" After all these years of silence, Sumit paused, taking a deep breath. He looked at the judge, at the jury, his gaze sweeping across the courtroom. For 10 years, he began, his voice cracking with emotion, the world watched me struggle to choose between the woman I loved and the family I was supposed to honor. But that was never the real choice. The real choice was a secret one they gave me every single day. They asked me to choose between my sister's life and a stranger's love. I tried to do both. I tried to make them happy to keep my sister safe, and I tried to find some happiness for myself. I failed at both. He finally turned to look at his mother. But a few weeks ago, my mother gave me a new choice. She threatened to throw my sister away, to let her rot in a state home, because I had finally married the woman I loved. She made it clear that my sister was not a daughter to her, but a pawn. And in that moment, I realized that my silence was not protecting my sister. It was enabling her abusers, so I made a new choice. I chose my sister, and I will choose her every day for the rest of my life. The verdict was a foregone conclusion. Anil and Sadhna Singh were found guilty on all counts. The judge, in his sentencing, delivered a scathing rebuke that was quoted in newspapers worldwide. He called their actions a case of moral and spiritual bankruptcy, so profound it is difficult to comprehend. He spoke of a monstrous betrayal of the sacred trust between a parent and a child, and described their use of Amisha as leverage against their son as an act of psychological torture. He sentenced them to the maximum possible prison term, stripping them of their assets, with a large portion designated for a trust fund for Amisha's lifelong care. And in his final and most significant ruling, he terminated their parental rights. He granted full and sole legal guardianship of Amisha Singh to her brother, Sumit. In the eyes of the law, Sumit had finally, officially rescued his sister. The reckoning that followed the trial was quiet and profound. The truth provided a shocking, tragic new context for Sumit's decade of on-screen indecision. He wasn't a weak, cowardly man who couldn't stand up to his mother. He was a trapped son, caught in an impossible moral dilemma, a tragic hero in a story we never knew we were watching. He had been playing a game of four-dimensional chess, trying to protect a hidden queen while the world only saw him fumbling with pawns. The public vilification of his parents was absolute, but Sumit found no joy in it. He had won his sister's freedom at the cost of his entire family, his entire past. And then there was Jenny. She had sat in the courtroom every single day, her face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. She was left reeling, forced to reevaluate every moment of their 10-year relationship. Every argument, every tearful fight with Sadhna was now cast in a different, more sinister light. The cruelty she had endured wasn't personal. She wasn't the target. She was merely the catalyst. The family's pathology was so much deeper, so much darker than a simple disapproval of her age. She had to confront the fact that the man she loved had kept a secret of this magnitude from her. The lie wasn't just about his previous marriage. It was about the very structure of his soul. The story ends not with a romantic resolution, but with a quiet, tentative beginning. It ends with Sumit, armed with a court order, walking back into the care facility, not as a secret keeper, but as a legal guardian. He walked into Amisha's room, and for the first time in over 20 years, he was able to say, without fear, "I'm your brother. I've come to take you home." Their reunion was not a movie moment. It was awkward and uncertain. Amisha, a woman who had known only institutional life, was shy and overwhelmed. Sumit was racked with guilt and the terrifying responsibility of caring for a sister he barely knew. But as he sat with her, and she hesitantly reached out and touched his hand, a bond that had been forcibly severed for 2 decades began, slowly, to mend. He was finally reunited with his sister, free from their parents' control, the promise of a crayon drawing finally fulfilled. Now he and Jenny must face their own reckoning. They must decide if their relationship, a relationship that was inadvertently forged in the crucible of this monstrous secret, can survive the truth. Can Jenny forgive a lie so profound, even knowing the unbearable pressure that created it? Can Sumit ever truly heal from a trauma that has defined his entire existence? Their future is an unanswered question. The 90-Day Fiancé chapter of their lives is over, replaced by a reality far more complex and challenging than any television show could ever portray. This is a story of unimaginable family cruelty, of a secret so dark it poisoned everything it touched. We were all witnesses, but we were all blind. Sumit's weakness was not a character flaw. It was a desperate, agonizing attempt to protect his hidden sister. Does this revelation change how you see him? Does it transform him from a frustratingly indecisive man into a tragic hero? I need you to let me know in the comments. This is the question that lies at the heart of this entire saga. Can you forgive Sumit's lies to Jenny now that you know the heartbreaking, impossible reason behind them?